right, all right. How's everyone doing? Doing good? Awesome.
Great, man. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you. Thank you. It's so good to see everyone here this morning. So, who here has family? A few of you. Awesome, awesome. So, family is so important. You guys are my family. I don't know how many of you know this, but I don't come from Washington. You guys are my family. My family, my blood family, they're all back home, back in Indiana, and then a brother in Tennessee. And so when I'm out here on my own, you guys are the family that I have chosen to be part of. And as part of that family, I need your grace. Patrick, I left the clicker on the thing there. That would be helpful. So I want to tell you about my blood family because you guys don't know my family. You don't know my dad and my brothers. So I want to tell you a little bit about my family. Thank you. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ben, and like I said, I come from Washington, or from Indiana, and so here's my family. This is me here. I'm the youngest. I know, I was cute once, wasn't I? So that's my dad and my mom. You can probably guess that. That's my oldest brother, Christopher, and my middle brother, Nick. Funny story, Nick and I, we share the same birthday, 3 years apart. So he always liked to joke that I was the only birthday present he ever wanted to return. Yeah. But I have a great relationship with my older brothers. They were the ones that I could turn to. We'd go out. Chris, graduated high school right as I was getting ready to go into high school. Nick was a senior when I was a freshman, so got to be close with them. But when I was real young, before I was in school, and they were off in elementary school and whatnot, my mom would tell me that what I would do is I would climb up onto the back of the couch and look through the big back window, out at the sidewalk, and I would just, when are my boys coming home? When are my boys? Because I loved being a part of the family. My name is Benjamin because I am the youngest of the three brothers, and if you know the Benjamin in the Bible, he's the youngest of more brothers than that. But that's where I get my name, part of this family. Let me show you another picture. We don't get to be together very often anymore because I've moved away. But here is us as we're older. My dad in the middle, my oldest brother Chris there, Nick and his little boy Sean, and me there in the back. Like I said, this was probably taken in 2011. That may have been one of the last times that we were all together. It's difficult to be together as a family. But this isn't my whole family. I'm going to share with you one more picture from this same trip. This is me and my brothers and several of their kids. I actually have 6 nieces and nephews, two of whom haven't been born yet in this photo. But here next to me in the back, that is my sister, Candy. Now, Candy wasn't always a part of our family. I met Candy when I was 9 years old. She was 3, and my parents started to babysit for her. Because she was in a family that needed a little bit of help. But we would babysit her for weeks and sometimes months at a time. You see, Candy actually, she grew up not knowing her mom and dad. There were some things that had happened when she was an infant that weren't good. She's never met her dad. She's met her biological mom once, who's been in and out of prison for years. Doesn't really get to know any of her stepbrothers or sisters. But this other family stepped in to kind of take care of her, but they weren't really good for her either. And so my parents, they saw this situation and they said, our hearts break for this little girl. What can we do? And so they said, we are going to pursue getting custody of her and then fight for adoption of her. And so really, she's been my sister for, 25 years. She has been my sister. Family is so important, isn't it? Isn't it? I think it'd be great if we this morning took a minute and just said thank you to our families. If we just said, you know what, I love you. We don't always get to be together. Some of us are going to be able to be together over the 4th. We're going to be traveling, whatnot. I get to go home on Wednesday, actually, to be with my family. But let's not wait for that moment. I'm actually going to invite you. Would you just pull out your cell phone right now, and would you maybe just send a text to somebody in your family? It might be the person sitting next to you, but just say, hey, you know what, I love you. Or, hey, I miss you. Hey, I'm looking forward to seeing you on Wednesday. I'm going to do the same exact thing, all right? So go ahead and do that. Let them know that you care about them and that you love them. I'm actually going to do it this way. You guys are doing it? Awesome. Somebody just texted me. Oh. Thanks, Ernie. So, the issue that pushes our movie Black Panther forward is an issue that revolves around a young boy who has been abandoned by his family. You see, this movie, it really revolves around the idea of a family, this royal family. Okay, so it takes place in this fictional country of Wakanda, which is in Africa, and Wakanda is home to some amazing technological advancements. Okay, but the Wakandans, they're fearful of other countries seeing the technology and all the stuff that they have, and so they decide to keep it out of the wrong hands. They're going to hide from the world. And so they're able to erect this protective barrier that people can't see them, and the rest of the world has this perception that they are a third world country, while really inside Wakanda, they have all these advancements. They're ahead of everyone. Well, there's a king, his name is King T'Chaka, and the movie actually flashes back to Oakland in 1992, and T'Chaka, he travels to Oakland from Wakanda to visit his brother, who's there on an assignment. He's kind of taken observation. He's really working as a spy in the country, and so King T'Chaka goes to talk to his brother, and it turns out that his brother, the prince, has betrayed Wakanda and smuggled out some of the technology that they are wanting to keep under wraps, keep protected, and he's wanting to use the technology to arm oppressed people in the world. We discover this later. This is going to be a spoiler alert if you haven't seen this movie. I'm going to spoil it for you right now, okay? There's a lot of great stuff in this movie. There's also some stuff that, isn't in gospel-oriented, but there's plenty that is. So I'll leave it up to you whether or not you want to go see it. But I'm going to spoil it right now. So if you don't want to spoil it, plug your ears, okay? We find out a little bit later in the movie that during this interaction where King T'Chaka confronts his brother, that there's an altercation, and his brother is killed at the hands of the king. And the brother has a son, the king's nephew. And the king leaves him as an orphan, abandoned, not knowing his family, not having anyone to take care of him. Well, the movie jumps forward to the present day, and the king's son, T'Challa, has just lost his father. And he doesn't know the backstory. He doesn't know what his father had done back in 1992, but he's just lost his father. His father has died, and so he's being crowned the new king. He's taking on the mantle of being king, which also means taking on the mantle of being the new Black Panther. And he has to figure out throughout the movie what it means to be a king. After he's a crowned king, he enters into this dreamlike state where he gets a chance to actually visit with his deceased father and have a conversation with him. And I want to share with you that conversation right now.
stand up. You are a king. Intone ekukhathazayo nyana andiqonde injerade baba ubomi bakho bonke kuhlala kuzilungiselela ukuba ikumkani ndikufundisa ndikuqeqesha uhleli apha ecaleni kwam. That is not what I am talking about. I am not ready to be without you. A man who has not prepared his children for his own death has failed as a father. Have I ever failed you? No. Tell me how to best protect Wakanda. I want to be a great king, Mother. Just like you. You're going to struggle. So you need to surround yourself with people you trust. You're a good man with a good heart. And it's hard for a good man to be king.
T'Challa, the Black Panther, he's faced with how to respond to the suffering and injustice of others. How does he be both good and king and respond to that issue? His answer, how he responds, seems to be the defining characteristic in the movie of what makes him a good king. See, and I think that's important because we don't just want a king, we want a good king, don't we? And the truth is that in Jesus, we have a good king. Let me share with you. We're going to dive into John chapter 18. It's a conversation that Jesus has with Pilate. He's on trial. This is just a short time before he's going to go and be executed. And so he's having a conversation with Pilate. We're going to jump in at verse 33 of John chapter 18. All right. It says this. Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Is that your own idea," Jesus asked, "or did others talk to you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it you have done?" Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." "You are a king then," said Pilate. And Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." "What is truth?" said Pilate. You see, this exchange between Jesus and Pilate revolves around the idea of Jesus as king. Okay, when Pilate asks, Jesus doesn't just simply tell him yes. He asks him a question, right? He probes a little bit further into Pilate's thoughts, into his heart. The implications of the conversation of what Pilate is thinking speaks to Jesus' identity. Okay, if this is just Pilate's idea, then Jesus is just a rebel who's there to usurp the throne from Caesar. Okay, if it's Pilate's idea, okay, then he's worried about, okay, you're a king, whoa, I serve a different king. Okay, but if it's the Jews' idea, then it implies that Jesus is the Messiah, whether or not Pilate cares about that. Either way, you see, we all must make a decision about who Jesus is. We want to know that he is a good king. And how he responds to injustice informs his goodness. Okay, this is the foundation of whether I'm going to believe in him or not. If he's good, I'm going to follow him. I'm going to worship him. I'm going to do the things that he wants me to do. Okay, I'm going to be a part of his kingdom. I'm going to sacrifice my life for his cause. But if he's bad, then I rebel against him. I say he's not worthy of my time. I'm angry at him. I refuse to believe that he exists. In the movie, when the Black Panther takes on the mantle of being king, there's a ceremony that takes place. As part of that ceremony, the Black Panther is challenged. He's stripped of his powers that he has, and a pathway is open to him for anybody in the country to challenge him for his throne, to be king. And in this situation, there's a tribal leader named M'Baku who shows up and says he's not a good king and challenges T'Challa for the throne. You see, I believe that ever since Jesus arrived on this earth, stripped of his power, of his divinity, he has been challenged by this world. He has been standing on trial. In fact, God has been on trial by us ever since the Garden of Eden. Can you trust him? Is he good? He knows that, if you eat of this, it's going to do this in your life. Questioning him. Our basis for the challenge is he good? Do we have a good king? See, and there's a reason why that we ask that question. It's because we see injustice in the world. And we feel like if he really is a good king, if he's really all powerful, he would do something about it. And so I question. T'Challa in the movie, he's got a couple of friends. And as they are trying to figure out what it looks like to really help the world, because they have all this technology and they could really provide and help the world, he's got friends on the other side of the issue. One friend, okay, let's go and provide humanitarian aid. Let's do refugee programs. Let's offer technology. Let's help the world. And his other friend says, well, if you let in the refugees, you let in their problems. But if you want me to take, my army and we can go and we can defeat the world really and really put it back in order and control it, then tell me to do that and I will do it. And the world will be better for it. And so T'Challa struggles. Right? How do I respond? What is the right course of action in the midst of this? But it isn't until he learns of the personal injustice of his cousin. It's not until he learns of what his father had done that moves him to real action. See, I believe that the proximity of the injustice, it resonates more deeply within him than the idea of injustice. See, we have two forms of injustice in our world. We have personal injustices that we experience. Going through divorce, being bullied, losing a loved one, losing a job, a broken heart, disease. It causes us to struggle with the idea that Jesus is good. But then we have these injustices that we don't necessarily experience, but we see. These global injustices in the world, right? There's racism, there's murder, there's war, starvation, sexual abuse, inequality, addiction, human trafficking, border issues, and it causes us to struggle. We struggle to reconcile the idea of a good God with the injustices that we see and experience in the world, and oftentimes it leaves us angry and broken, with a broken view of who God is and of who other people are. We want someone to blame, whether it's God or it's others. But I want to tell you this morning, we can trust that Jesus is good if we look to what is true. I love this, what Jesus says in the passage. In just a little bit later on in the passage, he says this. He says, I have come, the very reason I'm in the world is to testify to the truth. Right? Everyone on the side of truth listens to me. I find it interesting that Jesus says that I testify to the truth. We know that Jesus is the truth, okay? We know that he speaks the truth, but when you testify about something, you've witnessed something, right? It's something that you can see, you experienced it, you saw it. And so Jesus says, I testify to the truth. as if it's something that he's outside of and can witness and see that is what is true while also being the truth. You see, I believe this, that there is a objective truth that is outside of you and me, that is the measure by which all things are judged. It is the light that reveals what is good and what is evil. So let me just share with you, there's a lot of things that are true that we could name this morning as we look to see how Jesus is good. But I want to start with just one thing. Here's one thing that I think we all can agree is true. That humanity, as people, that we have value and worth. Regardless of what we bring to the table, we have value and worth. This is referred to in the Bible as the Imago Dei. It's the fact that we've been created in the image of God. And that kind of elevates us over the rest of creation as being image bearers of Him, that His Spirit lives inside of us. And so because of that, we have worth. I am more valuable than my dog. I love my dog. I'm going to take care of my dog. I'm going to steward the pet, the creatures that God has given me, but I am worth more than my dog. I think we mostly all can agree on that. And so the brokenness and the injustice that we see in the world is an erosion of the Imago Dei. That where the Imago Dei breaks down, where this idea that people have worth and value breaks down, is where we see racism. It's where we see human trafficking, pornography, sexual and domestic abuse, immigration issues, bullying, and the list could go on. You see, from the Imago Dei, this idea that we have intrinsic worth and value, we get the idea of crimes against humanity. Okay, I love this. This is a quote from a French philosopher named Jacques Derrida, and he's an atheist. Okay, so understand that as he's writing this, he says this: the concept of crimes against humanity is a Christian concept, and I think there would be no such thing in the law today without the Christian heritage, the Abrahamic heritage, the biblical heritage. How much as an atheist, as someone who says, I don't believe that God exists, how hard is it for him to name that that's where we get crimes against humanity? It's because people have worth. And that comes from the idea that God made us in His image. And so we can know that this is true. That heritage teaches us that we rebelled against God and brought about sin. And sin brought about the erosion of the Imago Dei. And because of that, we experience brokenness and injustice in the world. But because there's brokenness and injustice in the world, God sent Jesus, stripped of His power, into our world to show us the right way to live in the face of injustice, brokenness, and sin. And because he was the right way, and because He lived His life, He was the right sacrifice to deal with the root issue of injustice, which is sin. And His payment on the cross wipes the slate clean for us. And when He defeated death by rising again, He commissioned us, His followers, those who would believe in Him, to go and be God's representatives in the world, to bring about God's kingdom and God's change in the world. You see, from the beginning, we have a king who has been against injustice, who paid the price for sin, and who rallies His followers to fight against that injustice. But here's the thing. It's a different fight than what comes naturally to us. In his conversation with Pilate, Jesus says this, right? He says, my kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But my kingdom is not from here. I think we need to remember this idea as we think about what it means to follow Jesus and be His representatives. He doesn't say, my kingdom is political. He doesn't say it's military. He doesn't say it's financial. Okay? He says my kingdom actually doesn't actually come from this world. It's not any of these things. If we want to see change in the world, it's not going to come from policies, finances, military, governments. If we want to see change, change happens when God's people respond to God's call in God's ways, not the world's ways. So, how? What does it look like to respond in God's ways? How do we respond to issues of injustice, like the one we've seen recently at the border? It's a big issue in our world, in our country. A lot of people in other countries are weighing in on this conversation. What's our response? What's our responsibility as followers of Christ? I've been told in the past that I can talk fast sometimes because I can get excited. So I want to slow down right here because I think this is important. We need to stop pointing fingers and blaming administrations, blaming others. That's number one. Number two, we have to understand that we are not the judge. Even if we got clear, accurate, 100% truthful reporting, we cannot see every side. We cannot see every facet. We don't understand every story. We are not outside of the truth to be able to see what the truth is. So why do we place ourselves in the position of being judge? That's God's role. We must remember that everyone, in any situation, specifically in this one, from the kids to the parents, to those who have been abusing the kids and using them for their own means, to the Border Patrol agents, to the government, to those who disagree with you on this issue, all of these people are made in the image of God. We should respond to them in that way. And finally, the way that we fight injustice, it's not with our words. It's not with hatred or name-calling. It's through sacrificial love that says, I am willing to surrender and suffer for the good of somebody else. Look, sharing a link online is really easy to do. Loving your enemy is hard. Jesus doesn't call us to share a link. He calls us to love our enemies. Complaining about government is easy. Sacrificing your weekend to spend it with those in need is hard. If we really care about the brokenness in the world, maybe we just need to shut up and show it. So we have a king who is not blind to injustice. He meets it head on, filling us with his spirit to look like him and be his representatives in the world. A couple weeks ago, I shared this idea with you that the term disciple, it's a helpful word, but maybe another helpful word is the idea of being Jesus' understudy. That I want to look like him, right? That I want to be like him. I want to see how he does it. I want to see the role that he takes on. I want to be that myself. Just because I'm made in the image of God does not mean that I look like him with my words and my actions. Can I look like Jesus? I sincerely believe that it's hard to look like Jesus in isolation, okay? Because his kingdom is not of this world, but it invades this world. It is present in this world. It comes into this world. And we look like him when we step into the world and respond to the world in unworldly ways, in godly ways. If I just sit at home, am I advancing the kingdom? If I just stay behind a keyboard, am I advancing the kingdom? Can I go and love and meet people? Here's where I want to wrap it up. If we're going to look like Jesus and meet injustice head on, we must face the truth. The truth of our doubts and questions. Some of us haven't been willing to name that, you know what, I do wrestle with this idea of how God can be good and yet there's brokenness in the world. We have to face the truth of the hurt in our world, in the lives of the person next to us, at work, on the bus, at school. We cannot turn a blind eye. That's just omitting the truth. We must face the truth of God's call to do something, to love tirelessly and endlessly. We must be the love that people need. Because real love meets real need. Think about this. As we go into the world to take on injustice, we do so not with the gospel as our ammunition, but as our foundation that drives our love. Then, as we've represented Jesus well, as we've been his understudy, as we've looked like him, the people that we've demonstrated his love to move on in life. And they spread out in the world. And now this love that has been sparked to life in them can bring the kind of change that our world needs as they raise families, as they participate in politics, as they work jobs, as they coach sports. Let's go into the world and love people. And let's see the ripple effect of what happens when God's people respond to God's call in God's ways. This change we want to see in the world, it begins with us. And this table that we have this morning, it serves as a reminder of the change that God provided us in dealing with our sin and paying the price so that brokenness and injustice wouldn't run rampant anymore. Because he dealt with the brokenness in us first. And so we come to this table in need of grace, in need of truth, in need of the Spirit of God to come and fill us up that we might look like him. I'm going to go ahead and invite the servers now to come forward.